My name is Rachel Whitmore. I'm 23 years old, and for the past 2 years, the pain in my knee hasn't just slowed me down, it's rewritten the course of my life. I tore my ACL during my senior year volleyball semifinals, and while my doctor said surgery was urgent, my parents said it was too expensive. But that didn't stop them from surprising my younger sister Emily last month with a brand new $65,000 BMW, complete with a red bow and a garage reveal. The betrayal didn't just hurt, it hollowed me out, not because of the money, but because of what their choice said about who mattered. Through it all, the only person who truly saw me was my grandfather, Walter Whitmore. When my parents looked past me, he stood beside me. Before I share how one overlooked daughter reclaimed her voice, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to fight for the love and recognition you should have been given freely, hit like and subscribe. You're not alone. Growing up in Ashford, Oregon, I was the dependable one. While other kids spent weekends at birthday parties or sneaking into movie theaters, I was buried in textbooks, practicing volleyball until my legs gave out, or vacuuming our living room while my parents prepared dinner for guests. I was Rachel Whitmore, disciplined, focused, and responsible to a fault. My parents, Mark and Ellen, expected excellence, and I gave it to them quietly, consistently. A perfect 4.0 GPA, a starting spot on the varsity volleyball team, volunteer hours at the community center. I followed every rule, met every deadline, and never ever asked for more than I thought I deserved. Volleyball wasn't just a sport to me, it was a ticket, a way out of this town, a way forward. Every time I soared for a spike, for those few seconds mid-air, I tasted freedom. Coach Darla Wilson said I had real potential. She believed I could land an athletic scholarship, maybe even play Division I. College scouts were starting to show interest. For once, it felt like all the effort might actually mean something. And then there was Emily, my younger sister by 4 years. Emily was different. While I committed to routines and goals, she flitted from one hobby to another. 1 month, she wanted to be a painter, the next, a pianist. She quit everything before the ink dried on her registration forms. And yet, every new whim came with brand new supplies, easels, keyboards, private lessons. My parents never hesitated. "She's just finding herself," Mom would say, her voice soft, almost dreamy. "Not everyone knows their path at 16 the way you did, Rachel." But the truth was simpler than that. Emily wasn't just finding herself, she was their favorite, the golden child, the one they saw as soft and fragile, always in need of help or nurturing. I was the one who didn't need anything, or so they assumed. When I need new volleyball shoes, Mom suggested I pick up extra babysitting shifts. When Emily wanted a $400 dress for the winter formal, it appeared in her closet 2 days later, tags still on. When I won academic awards, I got a polite nod. When Emily passed algebra with a C-, we went out to dinner to celebrate her effort. There was only one person who seemed to truly see the imbalance. My grandfather, Walter Whitmore, my dad's father. He didn't live in town, but he visited often. He saw everything, the way I was left out of the small celebrations, the way Emily's struggles were coddled and mine were dismissed. I remember one afternoon, after a volleyball tournament, sitting on his porch with a glass of lemonade. The sun had started to set. "You're something special. Kiddo," he said. "Don't let them make you small. You hear me? Don't ever let anyone dim your light." At the time, I smiled, not really understanding how much I'd cling to those words later. Because back then, I still believed that hard work would be enough, that being good, being reliable would eventually get noticed. I didn't know yet how invisible you could become when everyone assumes you'll never need anything. And I definitely didn't know how quickly the people you love most can become the ones who hurt you the deepest. Just by choosing not to see you. By senior year. Volleyball wasn't just something I did after school. It was the thread tying together every dream I dared to have. College scouts were emailing Coach Wilson after every match. She kept telling me, "Rachel, you've got a real shot. Just keep showing up the way you do." And I did. Every practice, every rep, every mile run at dawn. I never told my parents about the recruiters. I didn't want to jinx it. Maybe a part of me wanted it to be mine, something they couldn't take credit for, something they didn't have the power to dismiss or ignore. The state semifinals felt like the culmination of everything. Our team had clawed our way through the bracket. We were 2 points away from a historic win. The gym echoed with chants. My teammates were shouting encouragement. My heart was hammering. Then the ball came my way. I leapt higher than I ever had before. My arm met the ball with precision. The spike was clean, powerful. We got the point. But I never saw it land. Because when I came down, something went horribly wrong. My right foot planted at the wrong angle. My knee twisted underneath me, and then came the sound, a sickening, unnatural pop. I collapsed instantly. The gym noise faded under the white-hot pain that tore through my leg like fire. Coach Wilson was at my side in seconds. So was the team doctor. I could barely hear over my own ragged breathing, but I caught a few words: ACL, meniscus, fracture, hospital. The pain blurred everything. My teammates looked stricken. The crowd went silent. And somewhere in the chaos, I remember Jasmine, my best friend, grabbing my hand. "I'm here," she said, breathless but steady. "You're not alone. I've got you." The paramedics arrived quickly. As they loaded me into the ambulance, the EMT looked down and said gently, "Your parents are following behind us. They'll meet you there." I nodded, eyes filled with tears, not from the pain, but from the disbelief that something so important could end like this. Except, they didn't meet me there. Not right away. By the time Jasmine and I had been in the emergency room for over an hour, I knew something was off. It was nearly 2 hours before Mom and Dad walked through the hospital doors. Their first words. We stopped for dinner. Emily was starving. I blinked at them, my leg propped up, wrapped in ice, pain radiating from every nerve ending. They didn't even look ashamed. The next day, the diagnosis came: complete ACL tear, severe meniscus damage, a hairline tibial plateau fracture. Dr. Gween, the orthopedic specialist, was calm but firm. "Without surgical intervention," she said, "you'll face long-term damage, chronic pain, early arthritis, limited mobility. With surgery and physical therapy, you could regain function, possibly even play again. At a recreational level." There was hope, a flicker. But then I looked at my parents, and I saw it. That look. The same one they gave each other whenever Emily wanted something expensive. Except this time, it was me in need. And it wasn't a luxury. It was medical. It was urgent. Still, I could see it in their eyes. They were calculating. I tried to ignore the signs. I told myself they were just overwhelmed, that maybe they needed time. So I pushed through. I started college at Ashford State with a bulky knee brace, popping painkillers, limping across campus while Emily breezed through her first semester at Briarwood University, fully funded by our parents. Despite her C average, I didn't complain. I never did. But the pain didn't get better. It got worse. Staircases were my enemy. I timed my walks across campus like a military operation. I cried in the bathroom, quiet and alone, while Jasmine sat outside the door, waiting with tea and tissues. "This isn't sustainable," she said one night. "Rachel, this isn't living. You need that surgery, and your parents should be helping you." I nodded. I knew she was right. But in our house, weakness wasn't an option. Not for me. Emily could flounder. She could fall apart. She could change majors 3 times and still be doted on. Me, I was the one who didn't need help. But the truth was, I was drowning. And I hadn't even realized how far under I'd gone until the moment I reached for my phone and hesitated before dialing home. Because I already knew the answer. I just wasn't ready to hear it. It was a Sunday night, the kind where the quiet feels heavy, where even the hum of the mini fridge in my dorm sounds like it's trying too hard to fill the silence. My knee was throbbing, angry from a full day of walking across campus. The brace hadn't helped much. Neither had the double dose of ibuprofen I'd taken after dinner. I sat on the edge of my twin bed, surrounded by textbooks and a half-written essay, holding my phone like it might burn through my hand. Their contact was still saved under Mom and Dad. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the call button. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. "Just ask." Jasmine walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. The moment she saw my face, she set them down and joined me. Calling the parents, she asked gently. I nodded, swallowing the knot that had lodged in my throat. "I can't keep living like this. Jazz, do you want me to give you space?" "No," I said quickly. "Stay." She sat beside me, her hand warm on my shoulder. I pressed call. It rang 4 times before Mom answered. "Rachel, everything okay? It's almost 9. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I need to talk to you and Dad about something important." I heard some shuffling. Then Dad's voice joined. "What's going on? Are your grades slipping?" Of course. That was his first question. "No, Dad. My grades are fine. It's about my knee." Silence. "It's getting worse." I continued. "Doctor Gwen was right. I need the surgery." Another pause. Longer this time. Mom's voice softened, that tone she always used before giving bad news. "Honey, we discussed this. Those types of surgeries are really expensive." "I know. But insurance would cover part of it. And Gwen said that if I wait too long, the damage could be permanent." Dad cleared his throat. "Do you have any idea what medical procedures cost these days? We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. We can't just throw that kind of money around." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I'm not asking you to throw it around. I'm asking for help. Help with something medically necessary." Mom jumped in. "Have you looked into alternative treatments? Your cousin Beth tried acupuncture for her back pain and had great results." Jasmine's eyebrows shot up. I felt my cheeks burn. "This isn't back pain. Mom, my ACL is torn. Acupuncture won't reattach a ligament." "Don't take that tone," Dad snapped. "We're trying to help. Are you—" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Silence again. Finally, Dad spoke. "Why don't you look for a better paying job? Something beyond that coffee shop. Start saving. Maybe by next year." Next year, I cut in. By then, I might not be able to walk. I'm already working 20 hours a week on top of a full course load. Dad sighed. "We all have to make sacrifices. Rachel, your mother and I worked hard for everything we have. Then help me protect what I've worked for." I said, The surgery costs $45,000 with insurance. I've saved a few thousand, but I can't do this alone. We're stretched thin right now, Mom said, her voice distant. You know we're helping Emily with tuition. Things are tight. I wanted to scream. Tight, I whispered. You didn't seem tight when she needed a new laptop last month, or when she switched dorms and asked for private housing. The conversation looped in circles after that. Excuses, deflections, long sighs, empty sympathy. Until I finally said thank you and hung up. I let the phone slide from my hand, landing on the bed like it had betrayed me. Jasmine didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her arm wrapped around my shoulder, and in that moment, I let myself lean into her. Just a little. I can't believe them, she murmured. I can, I whispered back, because deep down, I already knew what the answer would be. This was just another verse in the same old song. Emily's wants were always treated as needs, and my needs, they were just inconvenient. Winter break arrived dressed in snow and silence. 3 weeks away from the stairwells that made me cry. From the endless trek across campus, with a brace that no longer helped, I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was coming home to a place that no longer had room for me. I drove the 8-year-old Honda I'd bought with babysitting money through sleet and frozen back roads, my knee aching every time I pressed the clutch. The Whitmore house came into view like a postcard, white lights tracing the roofline, a wreath on the red front door. Emily's version of Christmas perfection. The driveway was packed, Mom's SUV, Dad's new sedan, and Grandpa Walter's pickup truck. My heart lifted just a little. Maybe tonight wouldn't feel like I was returning as a stranger. I hadn't even knocked before the door flew open. Emily stood there, cheeks pink from excitement, bouncing on her toes like a child on Christmas morning. Finally she beamed. You're missing all the excitement. What excitement, I asked, dragging my suitcase over the icy porch steps. You'll see, she grinned. Mom and Dad have a huge surprise. They made me wait until you got here. That caught me off guard. Emily never waited for anything, especially not for me. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Laughter filtered in from the living room. I spotted Grandpa Walter seated stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Olivia's here, Emily shouted. It's Rachel, I muttered. She always did that, mixed me up with old friends or old classmates, or just anyone but me. Dad clapped his hands together. Well, since we're all here, he said with overdone cheer. Let's head outside. Time for the big reveal. Everyone grabbed their coats. We followed him down the driveway, Emily practically buzzing beside me. Dad pulled out a key fob and pressed a button. The garage door creaked open, and there it was. A brand new BMW sedan, sleek, gleaming. A red bow was draped across the hood like something from a luxury car commercial. Surprise! Mom and Dad shouted. Emily screamed. Oh my God. Oh my God. Is this mine? Are you serious? All yours, princess? Dad confirmed, holding out the keys like he was handing her the moon. You said you wanted something safer than the Civic, Mom added. And we thought you deserved something special. Emily ran to the car, her fingers skimming over the leather seats, the sound system, the touchscreen console. It's exactly what I wanted, she breathed. How did you know you left the browser open on the family computer? Mom laughed. Subtle hint received. The cold air burned in my lungs. My hands shook, but not from the wind. Beside me, Grandpa Walter's voice cut through the awe. What model is it, he asked. Tone flat. BMW 3 Series. Dad answered proudly. Top-rated safety. Excellent performance. It has everything. And the price Grandpa pressed. Dad hesitated. Well, it came to about 65,000 after the premium package and warranty. 65,000. My mind reeled. That was 20,000 more than my surgery. I reached for the garage frame, trying to steady myself, the world tilting sideways. Congratulations. Emily, I said. The words tasted like ash. That's quite a gift. She didn't even look up. Mom placed a hand on my arm. Isn't it wonderful? She's had such a hard semester adjusting to college. We thought she needed something special. I stared at her. Something special. I opened my mouth, and everything poured out. 2 months ago, I said slowly, I begged you to help me walk without pain. You told me you couldn't afford it. Olivia, Mom said quickly, don't start. This is Emily's moment. You mean this moment I pointed at the car? This luxury vehicle you bought after telling me you couldn't help me stand up straight? Dad stepped forward. That's enough, Rachel. We make the financial decisions in this family, and you decided a BMW was more important than my surgery. Mom's voice rose. There are no guarantees. Even Dr. Nguyen said that. She said a 90% success rate. That's better odds than Emily graduating with her current GPA. Hey, Emily shouted from inside the car. Grandpa stepped in between us. I think, he said calmly, this conversation needs to move inside. But I was already walking away. Something inside me had snapped. This wasn't just favoritism. This was a declaration. And I heard it loud and clear. They didn't just refuse to help me. They chose not to. I left before anyone could stop me. Back inside the house, I grabbed my suitcase from the entryway. My hand was shaking as I opened the front door. The cold slapped my face, but I didn't care. Behind me, I heard Mom call out, Rachel, don't be dramatic. Where are you going? I didn't turn around. Back to my apartment, I said flatly. I'd rather be alone than be where I'm clearly not valued. Dad's footsteps followed me. Now wait just a minute, young lady. You don't get to speak to us that way. I stopped short and turned to face him, my knee throbbing with the sudden movement. You chose a luxury car over your daughter's health and future. I think I've earned the right to speak. Then I left. I tossed my bag into the back of my beat-up Honda and drove away from the house I'd grown up in. My eyes blurred with tears, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I got back to my nearly empty campus apartment, I didn't unpack. I didn't change clothes. I just called Jasmine. They bought her a BMW. I said when she picked up, $65,000. When they told me they couldn't afford 45 for my surgery, Jasmine was silent for a beat. Holy, Liv, I don't even have words. Neither did I whispered. Later that night, I overheard my neighbor Rachel, an older woman who lived across the hall, on the phone. I only caught parts of the conversation through the paper-thin walls. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. She's here. I saw her get some ice from the freezer. A pause. Well, maybe she needs some space. I understand you're concerned. I'll let her know you called. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. Your mom called, Rachel said gently. She sounded worried. Said they might not be able to send your usual allowance this month. Something about a big purchase. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Of course they can't. The irony was almost too perfect. They'd spent a small fortune to give Emily the car of her dreams. And now they were suddenly tight on money again. That night, I lay on my bed, an ice pack on my knee, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. I was done hoping, done waiting for things to change, for fairness. For someone to step in and say, "We see you. We're sorry." I decided I wouldn't ask again. From that point forward, I'd only focus on what I could control: my education, my health, my future, even if it was limited, even if it came with a limp. But I couldn't have known that my body had other plans. By February, every step felt like a countdown. Each class became a marathon. Each stair is a cliff. Even with disability services allowing me to drive between buildings, it wasn't enough. The damage was winning. My knee was losing the fight. When I saw Dr. Nguyen for a follow-up, her face was tight. She pressed gently around my joint, noting every flinch, every sharp breath. "The instability has worsened," she said quietly. "We'll order a new MRI, but I can already tell what it'll show." "More damage," I murmured. She nodded. "Bone spurs, cartilage wear. The tibial plateau fracture hasn't healed properly without intervention. Without surgery, and soon you're looking at permanent damage. Chronic pain, knee replacement by 30, maybe sooner." I closed my eyes. How soon is soon? "Within the next month," she said. "It's not ideal anymore. We've lost time, but we can still salvage a good outcome." I did the math in my head. My savings barely scratched 8,000, not even a fifth of what I needed. "I'll figure something out," I said. But even I didn't believe the words. When the new MRI results came in, they were worse than we expected. Bone spurs, progressive cartilage loss, meniscus degradation. I was out of time. I doubled my hours at the coffee shop. Jasmine begged me not to. "You can barely stand for 20 minutes, she said. "How are you going to do an 8-hour shift?" "I don't have a choice." Keith, our manager, tried to be gentle. But business was business. "I need someone fast during rush," he said. "Are you sure you can handle this?" "Absolutely," I lied. But the pain was no longer just pain. It had become a presence, a monster that followed me everywhere. It woke me at night. It walked beside me to class. It ate at my focus, my energy, my will. And then, on a busy Thursday afternoon, with the cafe packed full of students, I dropped. My knee gave out completely. No warning, no stumble, just failure. The tray of mugs in my hands hit the floor. Ceramics exploded around me. I followed it down, hard, into the mess. The pain was blinding. I remember screaming but not realizing it was my voice. Jasmine's face appeared above me in a blur. Then sirens. Then strangers. Then blackness. The next few hours passed in fragments. Flashes of fluorescent lights in the ambulance. The prick of an IV needle. A blur of questions I could barely understand through the haze of pain. Then the face of Dr. Collins, the orthopedic surgeon on call. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "Your knee gave out because the ACL is completely non-functional," he said, pointing at the X-ray. "There's extensive new tearing in the meniscus, additional cartilage loss. You need surgery, immediately." "I know," I whispered, my voice thick with medication. I can't afford it." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. "This isn't cosmetic," he said. "This is about preserving basic mobility. Without intervention, your quality of life will deteriorate. Fast." Before I could respond, the curtain to the treatment bay pulled back. My parents stepped in. Mom's face was pale. Dad was tight-lipped, jaw clenched. Jasmine was right behind them. "What happened?" Mom asked, rushing to my side. Her knee collapsed, Jasmine said. "Right in the middle of her shift." Dr. Collins looked at them. She needs reconstructive surgery urgently. The delay has caused significant complications. The longer you wait, the worse the outcome. Dad crossed his arms. And the cost? With insurance, the total out-of-pocket will be around $45,000. Doctor, Collins replied. That includes surgery, anesthesia, hospital stay, and initial rehab. Mom reached for my hand. We'll figure something out, honey. But I saw it again, the look she gave Dad. That same look they shared when they told me no the first time. Nothing had changed. Don't bother, I said quietly. I know where I fall in the family budget. Rachel, Dad said sharply, this isn't the time or place. When is the time, I asked? After I'm permanently disabled. After I drop out because I can't even make it to class. The nurse entered then, announcing they were admitting me overnight for pain management. As they began to move me, Emily appeared in the doorway, keys from her BMW dangling in her hand. I got here as fast as I could, she said, annoyed. Parking was a nightmare. She looked at me for the first time. Whoa, you look awful. Is it just your knee again? Something inside me cracked. It's not just a knee thing. Emily, I said, voice shaking. It's a year of pain you never asked about. A year of me begging for help while you were busy picking out car colors. Her face fell. That's not fair. Isn't it? I snapped. You knew they said no, and you still showed them brochures. You knew exactly what they were doing. I didn't ask them to choose me over you, she muttered. No, I said. You just let them. Enough, Dad barked. Emily, wait outside. But in your brand new BMW, I added. Bitterness thick in my throat. Must have been such a rough drive. She left without another word. The nurse looked uncomfortable. I'll give you a moment, she murmured, casting a glance that said more than any words. Dr. Collins stayed. Dad turned toward him, business tone engaged. Is there any less invasive option we should consider first? Number, Dr. Collins replied flatly. We're past that. Conservative treatment failed. Surgery is the only option now. Mom's voice trembled. But there are risks, right? There are risks, I interrupted. But not doing it guarantees disability. I looked at both of them. This isn't happening because I waited. It's happening because you made me wait. Neither of them spoke. I was done begging. As they wheeled me toward the hospital room, Jasmine walked beside the stretcher, silent for a while. Then she said it. I'm calling your grandfather. I turned my head slowly. This time, I didn't protest. Because deep down, I think I had been waiting for someone to say that all along. I woke up just after dawn. The light outside my hospital window was soft, gray, still unsure if it wanted to be morning. But the room wasn't empty. There, in the chair beside my bed, sat Grandpa Walter. His posture is upright. His eyes were fixed on my face, hands folded, not in worry, but in quiet readiness. Grandpa. My voice was dry, groggy. You didn't have to come. There's nowhere else I should be, he said, reaching for the water pitcher and pouring me a cup. Jasmine called last night, told me everything. I took the cup. My hands shook slightly. I didn't want to worry you, and I didn't want to put you in the middle of things with Dad. He looked at me, really looked, and something inside his expression shifted. You let me worry about your father, he said. That stopped being your job a long time ago. A nurse entered to check my vitals. After she left, Grandpa moved closer, his voice lowered. I want to hear everything. No filters. No softening. Tell me what's been going on. So I did. I told him everything from the injury during that volleyball match to the slow, spiraling pain. I told him about Dr. Nguyen's warnings, the phone call where my parents gave me excuses, and then the Christmas reveal that broke me. I told him what it felt like to collapse in front of strangers while my body finally gave out and no one from my own family had seen it coming. When I finished, the room was silent. Grandpa stared at the wall for a long moment, his jaw tensed. A muscle twitched near his temple. When he finally stood up, he looked taller than I'd seen him in years. "I knew your father favored Emily," he said quietly. "I tried talking to him about it, more than once. But this," he shook his head, "this is beyond favoritism. This is abandonment." He pulled out his phone. No hesitation. "I'm going to make one call," he said. "Then we're going to fix this." I didn't know who he was calling. I didn't ask. But I watched him step out into the hallway, voice low and steady, all trace of warmth gone. 10 minutes later, he came back in, his expression unreadable. "Your parents will be here within the hour," he said. "I've also asked Dr. Collins to meet with us. I want him to explain your medical situation again this time, with everyone in the room." I blinked. "You did all that already." He nodded. "This isn't up for debate anymore." And just like that, the weight I'd been carrying alone for over a year didn't feel quite so crushing. He sat beside me again. But this time he didn't say anything. He just placed his hand gently over mine. Solid, present, not going anywhere. True to his word. My parents arrived 45 minutes later. They stepped into the room cautiously. Dad's voice was stiff. "Olivia, Rachel, how are you feeling?" "About the same," I said. Mom hovered near the foot of the bed. "Did you sleep okay?" "These hospital beds are so uncomfortable." Grandpa cut in, his tone sharp but contained. "Let's skip the small talk." Dad bristled. "With all due respect, this is between us and our daughter." "No," Grandpa interrupted. "It stopped being just between you when you failed her. When you made her fight through pain for over a year while you wrote checks for leather seats and heated steering wheels." The tension in the room thickened like smoke. A knock at the door broke the silence. "Dr. Collins entered, holding my chart. His expression was professional, but his gaze was direct. "Good morning," he said. "I understand this is a family conference." "Yes," Grandpa replied. "Doctor, would you please explain clearly what Rachel's condition is, what treatment she requires, and what happens if it's delayed further, Dr. Collins nodded. And then, he did exactly that. He explained my torn ACL, the progressive cartilage damage, the improperly healed fracture. He laid it out with no emotion, no softening, just facts. With insurance, he concluded, her out-of-pocket cost would be about $45,000. That includes the full surgical package and post-op therapy. Grandpa nodded slowly. "And is this procedure medically necessary or elective?" "It is absolutely medically necessary," Dr. Collins said. "Delaying any longer risks permanent disability." "Thank you, Doctor. We'll call if we need anything further." As Dr. Collins left, Grandpa turned to my parents, his face granite. "I'm paying for the surgery." Dad opened his mouth, but Grandpa raised a hand. "I'm not finished. I'm paying for it because apparently my son and daughter-in-law think a car is more important than their daughter's ability to walk." "That's not fair," Mom started. "Isn't it?" Grandpa's voice was calm, but steely. "Tell me, Ellen, how much do you and Mark have in savings right now?" They both froze. "That's private information," Dad snapped. "Not anymore," Grandpa replied. Not when you used false claims of financial hardship to deny your daughter medical care. I called your financial advisor this morning. Martin's been a friend for 30 years. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. He looked at me then. They have over 182,000 in their primary account and another 75,000 earmarked for Emily's future wedding. The room went silent. It wasn't that they couldn't help me. They chose not to. The truth didn't explode. It didn't roar through the room like a storm. It settled in quietly, like a blanket of ash after the fire has already burned everything down. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there in that hospital bed, hearing the numbers out loud. 182,000 in savings, 75,000 set aside for a wedding that hadn't even been planned yet. They had the money. They always had. And still, they chose to watch me suffer. I turned to face them, my voice barely above a whisper. So it wasn't about the cost. It was about the choice. Dad couldn't look at me. It's more complicated than that, he muttered. How I asked. Help me understand. You had the funds. You had the facts. What made you decide that my surgery, my health was negotiable? Mom wrung her hands. We made a promise to Emily. We've been saving for her wedding since she was little. She's always dreamed of something special. And I dreamed of walking without pain. I said, of playing again, of not living in fear that a staircase might end my day in an emergency room. The words weren't cruel. They weren't even angry. They were just true. I worked hard, I added. I never asked for anything. I followed every rule. I got the grades. I earned the scholarships. I built my life on quiet effort. While you poured everything into noise and celebration for someone who never once had to prove herself. Mom stepped forward. Rachel, you always seemed so capable. We didn't think that I'd need you, I interrupted. That I'd break down, that I'd bleed. Grandpa Walter didn't say a word, but he didn't need to. He stood beside me, the weight of his presence shielding me like armor. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, he said, his voice calm but final. I've already cleared the cost with the hospital. I'll be staying during recovery. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We can help. Now. We want to help. I looked at her, and something inside me shifted. Not in anger, in clarity. You want to help now because the damage is visible, I said. Because Grandpa knows. Because you're embarrassed. Not because you suddenly see me. They didn't deny it. Maybe we should go, Grandpa said, turning to them. Dad straightened. You don't get to dismiss us from our daughter's hospital room. I spoke this time. My voice is steady. I want you to leave. I can't look at either of you right now without seeing leather seats and a red bow where my surgery should have been. That did it. They left without protest. Mom paused at the door, her face wet. But I turned my head away. When the door clicked shut, Grandpa let out a slow breath and sat down beside me again. I should have seen it sooner, he said quietly. You couldn't have, I replied. I didn't tell you how bad it was. He reached for my hand. You shouldn't have had to. And in that moment, I finally let go. I cried. Not because of the surgery, or the pain, or the betrayal, but because for the first time in so long, I wasn't carrying it alone. The next morning, the surgical team arrived before sunrise. Dr. Collins walked me through the plan one last time, a graft from my patellar tendon to reconstruct the ACL, repairs to the torn meniscus, and fixation of the plateau fracture. It's complex, he said, but I'm confident we'll get a good result. As they prepped the stretcher to wheel me away, the door creaked open. Mom and Dad stood there, hesitant, cautious, small in a way I'd never seen them. Can we come in for a minute? Mom asked. I looked at Grandpa. He gave a small nod. Your choice, kiddo. I exhaled slowly. Okay. Just for a minute. They stepped in like they were walking on broken glass. We just wanted to say, good luck, Dad said, stiffly. And to say we're sorry, Mom added, holding out a small gift bag. Inside was a photo. I, in cap and gown, between the two of them. From a time before things had names, before injuries and favoritism had hardened into silence. I don't know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to. Mom said, we want you to know we're trying to understand. It wasn't enough. Not nearly. But it was something. As the nurses rolled me out, Grandpa walked beside the bed. I'll be right here when you wake up, he said. And for the first time in over a year, I believed him. The surgery lasted just under 4 hours. I don't remember much of it, only the soft voice of the anesthesiologist counting me down, and then waking up in recovery with my knee wrapped in layers of gauze, braced and elevated. Everything felt distant, fuzzy, as though I were moving through fog. But Grandpa was there, just like he promised. He was the first face I saw when I fully came to sitting in the corner of the room, reading a paperback with his glasses perched low on his nose. When he noticed my eyes were open, he put the book down immediately. Hey there, kiddo, he said gently. Welcome back. How'd it go? I mumbled. Dr. Collins said it went well, better than expected. He smiled. You gave us a scare for a minute. Your blood pressure dropped a bit, but you're stable now. I blinked slowly. Stable's good. Taylor appeared not long after, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She must have driven all night to get back to campus. You scared the hell out of me, she said, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. But you did it. You made it through. I smiled faintly, grateful. Grateful that she came. Grateful that I wasn't alone. My parents visited too. Quiet. Careful. They didn't stay long, and I didn't ask them to. There was still a space between us that couldn't be crossed with flowers and folded apologies. Not yet. Recovery began immediately. I was transferred to a room on the orthopedic floor for monitoring and pain management. By the third day, I was well enough to be discharged. Grandpa insisted I stay with him. No arguments. He said, my house is 1 level. You won't have to worry about stairs. And besides, I've been meaning to get rid of that recliner. Might as well let you wear it out first. He became my anchor, driving me to appointments, checking every medication schedule, and lifting my spirits when I wanted to quit. The exercises were grueling. Standing was hard. Bending was worse. But step by step, I started to heal. Not just physically, but in other ways I hadn't expected. And then, 3 weeks post-op, there was a knock at Grandpa's door. It was Emily. She stood there in a sweatshirt and jeans, no makeup, no drama. Not the polished version of her I had grown used to. In the driveway behind her wasn't the BMW. It was an old Honda, probably her first car. The one they gave me before they decided she needed something safer. I sold it, she said, following my gaze. The car. She nodded. It didn't feel right. Keeping it. I said nothing, unsure of what to do with this unfamiliar version of her. She stepped inside hesitantly, glancing around the living room like she was entering sacred ground. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, she said softly. But I needed to come. I didn't answer. I just motioned toward the couch and slowly lowered myself into the armchair, crutches resting nearby. She sat, I heard everything at the hospital. She began. What Grandpa said. What you said. And I've been thinking a lot. I waited. I always knew they treated me differently. She said, I just never wanted to see how much it hurt you. I looked at her carefully. And now I do, she whispered. I've started seeing a therapist. I'm using the rest of the car money for sessions. Turns out, being the golden child kind of messes you up, too. Just in a different way. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. You never asked me to sell the car, she continued. And I'm not telling you this to get credit. I want you to know that I see it now. All of it. For the first time in years. I didn't feel that tight knot in my stomach when she spoke. I just nodded. What changed, I asked. Her eyes welled up. But she didn't look away. You collapsed, she said. And I realized that while I was out partying and posting pictures of my perfect life, you were fighting just to stand. There was a pause, long and quiet. I'm sorry. Rachel. Truly. The words didn't fix everything, but they landed, soft and steady, and real. Maybe for the first time, so was she. Emily's apology didn't heal everything, but it was the first crack in a wall I'd spent years quietly staring at, hoping it might one day break. After that afternoon at Grandpa's, something shifted. Not just in her, but in me. She didn't go back to Briarwood right away. Instead, she stayed in town for a while, visited once or twice a week. Sometimes she brought groceries. Other times she sat quietly on the couch, just keeping me company while I iced my leg. There were no big gestures, no grand confessions, just a small, quiet effort. The kind I'd always given, but rarely received. Meanwhile, recovery pressed on. 3 weeks turned into 6. The brace came off. Crutches became a cane. Then, slowly, tentative steps on my own. Physical therapy was brutal. Some days, I left the clinic with tears in my eyes and pain ringing through my leg like an alarm. Other days, I walked just a little further, stood just a little taller. Grandpa was at nearly every session, and when he couldn't be, Jasmine was. They never made a show of it. They just showed up. My parents stayed at a distance. Phone calls, occasional check-ins, a box of protein bars Mom had read, was good for joint health. They were trying in their own awkward, too-late way. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Then came the suggestion I never expected: family therapy. It came during one of their visits, my mom sitting on the edge of the recliner, hands folded, as if preparing for court. We've started seeing someone, she said gently. A counselor. Separately. For now. But she thinks, maybe we could meet together. The 4 of us. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect what little peace I'd started to build. But another part, the quieter part, wondered if maybe healing didn't have to be a solo project. I'll think about it, I said. And I did. For 2 weeks. Then one Thursday, I told them yes. The sessions were hard. The first few were tense and raw. There were tears, defensiveness, silence that stretched too long between words. But also, for the first time, truth. I told them how it felt to be the reliable one, the one who got nods instead of praise, silence instead of support, the one whose pain they only believed when it came with an X-ray and a hospital bed. Dad admitted he'd always assumed I had it handled, that my strength made it easy to overlook my struggle. Mom cried when she realized how many times I'd swallowed hurt just to keep the peace. Even Emily, who sat in on the third session, spoke up. "I think they made me fragile," she said, her voice quiet, "by never letting me figure things out. And they made you invisible. I'm sorry for both. It didn't fix everything, and it didn't erase the past. But it made space. Space for conversations that had never happened. Space for me to speak without fear of being dismissed. Space for us to name what was broken, and maybe, slowly, begin to rebuild, too." Outside of therapy, I started building something else, too. At first, it was just casual conversations with a few classmates, people who'd also grown up in households where fairness was optional and favoritism was the norm. But those conversations turned into a campus support group, 20 students, then 30. We met once a week in a quiet corner of the student union. We didn't just talk about resentment. We talked about survival, about growing up learning to shrink ourselves, about the quiet ache of not being chosen. And for the first time in a long time, I felt useful. Not because I was strong, or smart, or disciplined, but because I understood, because I could look someone in the eye and say I've been there. And you're not alone. Even Emily came once. She sat in the back, didn't say much. But when someone mentioned what it was like to be the golden child, she raised her hand. And when she spoke, she didn't make excuses. She told the truth. I knew what I was asking for wasn't fair. But I asked anyway, because I knew they'd say yes. Some people nodded, others cried. And I watched my sister flawed, messy, human begin to become someone new. Maybe we all were. 6 weeks after surgery, I walked from my bedroom to the kitchen without assistance. No cane, no crutches, just me unsteady, slow, but walking. Grandpa was standing at the counter when he turned around and saw me. "Well, would you look at that?" he said, eyes misting. "Didn't I tell you strongest one in the family?" I laughed, just a little, because it wasn't the kind of strength I used to think I needed. Not the kind built from silence or endurance or pretending I was fine. It was the kind that lets you sit with pain, name it, and still choose to move forward anyway. Physical recovery continued, steady and incremental. I graduated from walking short hallways to full stretches across campus. My knee didn't feel like it used to, and it probably never would. There were limitations now. Little reminders of what I'd been through, occasional stiffness. Long days followed by deep aches, but nothing like the agony that had once kept me up at night. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I could sit through class without constantly shifting. I could carry a bag of groceries without dreading the walk back. I could join Jasmine for our evening loop around the lake trail. Slow, but unafraid. The pain was no longer a weight I carried alone. It was simply a fact, a part of my story. But not the whole of it. Emotionally, the healing took longer. I still struggled when I passed families on campus who laughed too easily. I still hesitated when my phone buzzed and I saw mom or dad on the screen. There were days I didn't answer, days I did. We were still doing therapy, still navigating the awkwardness of learning how to be a different kind of family. Sometimes we made progress, other times we didn't, but at least we weren't pretending anymore. The biggest surprise came during one of those sessions. Dr. Levine, our therapist, asked us to go around the room and each name what we wanted moving forward, not from the past, but from the present. My answer came first, and I didn't hesitate. Boundaries. I said, I want boundaries that are respected. I want support when I ask for it, not just assumptions that I'll figure everything out. And I want equality not just in money or attention, but in expectations. Dr. Levine nodded. That seems fair. She turned to my parents. Mark, Ellen, what's your response? They exchanged a look. Then Dad, for once, didn't deflect. It's fair, he said. More than fair. We haven't been equal. Not even close. We have a lot to learn. Mom, tears in her eyes, added quietly. I want a relationship with both of my daughters. A real one. Not based on who needs more or who asks less. Emily sat beside me, fingers woven tightly in her lap. When it was her turn, she looked up and said something I'll never forget. I want us to be honest, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That sentence stayed with me for days. Maybe that was what this entire journey had been about, not the injury or the car or the money, but the truth, the willingness to face it, to let it reshape us, to let it hurt and still stay in the room. By fall, my parents made another decision. They sold the house, downsized to something simpler, closer to Grandpa's. We don't need all that space anymore, Mom told me, and the equity will help us get our priorities straight. She didn't say it outright, but I knew the house had been part of the problem. Too many rooms filled with unspoken things, too many moments where appearances mattered more than people. One crisp October afternoon, I found myself back at the student union, sitting in a circle of folding chairs with 20 other students. Our support group had grown more voices, more stories. Some came from favoritism, others from emotional neglect, strained expectations, and unspoken pressure. All of us had something in common. We knew what it was like to feel unseen, unheard, unchosen. I shared my story again, this time with clarity and without bitterness. I talked about the surgery, yes, but also about the silence that came before it. The dinner tables where I went unnoticed. The birthdays are remembered too late. The injuries were ignored until they bled into my future. But you're here now, one student said, and you made space for the rest of us to speak. Maybe that was the point. Maybe healing wasn't just about stitching up what was torn, it was about helping others mend, too. I didn't need to be anyone's hero. I just needed to be someone who understood.